always believed my life was perfect, at least that's what I told myself and everyone around me. Friends, family, even acquaintances admired my marriage, convinced that my husband and I had it all figured out. I was an artist, and not just any artist. People in the local business community of Canterbury had taken to collecting my work, eager to own a piece of what they called refreshingly original. My paintings hung in offices and homes, and my name was whispered with respect. My husband, James, was the sort of man who commanded attention. A powerful entrepreneur, sharp and decisive, someone who seemed to bend circumstances to his will with ease. On the surface, our life was enviable, a tableau of success and harmony. I never imagined James capable of betrayal. Sure, there were whispers, those poisonous little things that float around like autumn leaves. Tales from envious tongues or bored acquaintances. I brushed them off with a laugh, convinced they held no truth. Until the day I found him in the arms of another woman. It was like the floor fell out from beneath me, and I was left gasping in a dark pit where trust and love had once lived. How long had this been going on? It didn't matter. The damage was done, and the only path left was to sever the ties that bound you. Divorce. Our son, Charlie, just 7 and full of life, would be caught in the storm. I dreaded the thought of him growing up without his father, the absence looming like a shadow over our small family. James, ever the pragmatist, or perhaps the cold strategist, acted as if nothing had happened. He dismissed the whole affair with a shrug, asserting that a family's foundation was the man, with the woman playing a secondary role at best. When I told James I'd filed for divorce, he smiled that patronizing smile, the one that made my skin crawl. He told me I wouldn't survive without him, reminding me of the lifestyle he provided. The wealth I'd lose the moment I walked away. My modest earnings from paintings and some investments were a drop in the ocean compared to his fortune. He predicted that soon enough I'd be begging to come back, waiting for his word like a dog for its master's whistle. I didn't argue. I knew James well enough to recognize when he was bulldozing through truth and empathy alike with unshakable certainty. Each day leading up to the court hearing was torture. I tried to focus on my art, attempting to capture the turmoil inside me on canvas, but the colors refused to blend, the brushes faltered. Sitting by the river store, sketches in hand, I felt like a ghost observing my own life, unable to translate the pain into anything beautiful. The day of the hearing arrived, cloaked in cold rain and anxiety. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, urged us to reconsider, focusing on Charlie's welfare. Then James took the floor with his usual arrogance, announcing he wouldn't defend himself, giving me a mere 3 minutes to convince him not to divorce. His smirk was a challenge. He knew I'd fail. The subtle message was clear. The divorce was his idea, and I was the supplicant begging for mercy, but I wasn't here to beg. I spoke, carefully yet fiercely, revealing the depth of his betrayal in just 3 minutes. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted. I caught the flicker of discomfort on James's face. The judge saw through it all and postponed the decision for 2 weeks, a chance for us to reflect, or so she said, mostly for Charlie's sake. During that wait, I nurtured a fragile hope. We would divide our assets fairly, and I'd find a place for Charlie and me, a flat with a spare room for my studio, where inspiration could strike at any hour. My art was my lifeline, and the thought of having my own space to paint gave me something to cling to. But the next hearing brought a shock. James wasn't just seeking a divorce. He wanted to strip me of everything: our cottage just outside Canterbury, my shares in his company, even my right to see Charlie freely. It was a calculated move to crush me completely. I realized then that the man I thought I knew was a master of deception, wearing a mask of respectability that hid a heart of cold ambition. I didn't confront the judge with all this outright. Sometimes discretion is the better part of courage, but I framed my case in a way that earned her trust. The court delayed proceedings again, to my husband's fury. He was baffled how I found a way to sway the law, despite his attempts to control the narrative. James hatched a plan to turn Charlie against me, convinced that if his son chose him, all would be lost. But the judge ruled that Charlie would remain in my care during this time, acknowledging the uphill battle I faced alone. After the hearing, I sought advice from a friend whose husband was a solicitor. They recommended a top divorce lawyer in London, a man named Samuel Thornton. Samuel was known for his sharp mind and hefty fees. Only those with deep pockets dared seek him out. I swallowed hard at the thought of the expense but knew it was necessary. Better to invest now than lose everything later, especially Charlie. Samuel took my case with a professional nod. He'd dealt with men like James before. He warned me the fight would be brutal, but he was confident. News of my choice reached James quickly. He learned Samuel was not only expensive but ruthless, willing to push limits for a price. The very next morning, James stormed into Samuel's office, ready to negotiate. Samuel set a fee so high it made James's usual confidence falter for a moment. Still, James pressed for a discount, only to be met with a cold smile and a reminder that the fee exceeded what I was willing to pay. James left, grumbling about where I found such money, selling paintings for goodness sake. But the truth was, I had no intention of backing down despite Samuel's fierce reputation. I soon sensed something off. Our meetings felt like a game of smoke and mirrors. He skirted around the case's real issues, speaking in circles that left me dizzy and confused. Alarmed, I reached out to my friend's husband again, who suggested this was Samuel's tactic to pressure me into paying more or to sabotage my case altogether. Frustrated but determined, I sought another lawyer. A young, relatively unknown advocate named Alex Reed. Alex was the opposite of Samuel: modest fees, a fresh approach, and no ties to the high-powered elite. He listened carefully, then offered to take my case pro bono, motivated by the chance to prove himself. His energy was infectious. He moved swiftly, uncovering shocking details about James's secret life, connections to shady dealings, multiple affairs, and a web of lies stretching far beyond our marriage. One of James's former lovers, a woman named Helen, initially reluctant, agreed to testify after learning James wanted to cut me off from Charlie. Her courage gave me hope, but it also brought danger. James's mother, Margaret, a formidable woman with a reputation for ruthless influence, caught wind of Helen's involvement. She threatened her, trying to silence her with veiled promises and cold warnings. Helen stood her ground, even recording their confrontation on her phone, a move that left Margaret sputtering and powerless. Meanwhile, Alex discovered James had a child with another woman, a secret kept hidden for years. The tangled mess of James's double life came into sharp focus, and I understood the stakes were higher than I imagined. James's plan to deprive me of Charlie was less about custody and more about inflicting pain. Margaret's interference escalated, but Alex held firm, refusing to be bought or intimidated. The battle was not just legal but personal, a chess match with lives on the line. As the court date approached again, the stress mounted. Then, just when I thought I could catch my breath, Charlie was diagnosed with a rare illness. The treatment was complex and expensive, with one critical medication nowhere near affordable on my income alone. The weight of the world pressed down on me. But even in this darkest hour, a glimmer of light appeared. A call from the Canterbury City Council's Arts Department, offering to buy 3 of my paintings for a sum that took my breath away. It was like the universe was reminding me that art had always been my sanctuary and salvation. The courtroom became an arena where every word, every testimony was a weapon. Helen's delayed arrival due to mysterious parking blockades only intensified the tension. James and his lawyer played their roles with practiced precision, but Alex's evidence and unwavering resolve turned the tide. The judge ruled in my favor. Charlie would stay with me, our assets divided fairly, and James stripped of his attempts to isolate me. The victory was bittersweet. James's attempts to manipulate buyers and inflate property values backfired, exposing his schemes. Margaret's furious calls accusing me of conspiracy were met with silence. I was beyond caring. Alex advised me to sell my shares in James's business and focus on my own path. He encouraged me to open a design studio, blending my artistic passion with a practical venture. The idea thrilled me, to build something truly mine. As I rebuilt my life, James's world crumbled. Police investigations revealed his illegal dealings and art theft. When authorities found stolen paintings in his hidden compartments, he claimed ignorance, blaming me for the art knowledge, as if I'd masterminded his crimes. The absurdity of his denials only highlighted his desperation. Called in for questioning, I stood firm with Alex by my side, refusing to be drawn into baseless accusations. The investigation unveiled Margaret's shadowy role in smuggling stolen art, linking her to an international crime ring. I was stunned. The woman who once seemed a matriarchal force of stability was a puppeteer in a dark game I never wanted to be part of. Through it all, I found unexpected allies. Doctors who cared for Charlie, friends who stood by me, and Alex, whose quiet strength became my anchor. Charlie's health. The morning light filtered softly through the thin curtains of my small flat in Canterbury, casting gentle shadows across the worn wooden floor. It was the kind of early spring day that teased warmth but held a lingering chill in the air. I stood by the window, clutching a cup of tea that had long since gone lukewarm, my thoughts a tangled mess of relief and apprehension. The courtroom victory felt like a distant echo now, overshadowed by the weight of what lay ahead. Charlie was asleep in the next room, his breathing steady and peaceful for the first time in weeks. The treatment was working slowly but surely, and for that I was grateful beyond words. Yet, even as I watched over him, a persistent knot twisted in my stomach. The battle with James and his family wasn't over, not by a long shot. The doorbell rang sharp and unexpected. I wasn't expecting anyone this early. Opening the door, I found Alex standing there, his face pale but determined, the faintest trace of a smile touching his lips. He carried a thick folder under one arm and a steaming coffee in the other, as if he'd just come from a sleepless night spent poring over papers. Without waiting for an invitation, Alex stepped inside, placing the folder on the cluttered dining table. "I've got something," he said quietly. "You remember those paintings the police found at James's place? The ones they claimed were stolen originals?" I nodded, the memory of that surreal day still vivid. The accusation, the disbelief, the cold realization that I was now entangled in something much darker than a messy divorce. "Well," Alex continued, flipping through the folder, "we've got confirmation from the art experts. Those paintings aren't originals. They're forgeries. High quality, yes, but copies. Someone went to great lengths to make them look authentic." He paused, eyes locking with mine. "And the real originals? Still missing." That I felt a chill creep up my spine. It was bad enough that James was under suspicion. Now this tangled web seemed to reach even further, suggesting a conspiracy that stretched beyond us both. "Who benefits from this?" I whispered. "That's the question," Alex replied. "And I think we're about to find out." Over the next few days, the atmosphere around me grew thick with tension. Margaret, James's mother, remained a looming presence, her cold gaze following my every move whenever we crossed paths in court corridors or through mutual acquaintances. I caught whispers of her threats, subtle but unmistakable, as she tried to pressure witnesses and manipulate outcomes behind the scenes. Yet, it was Helen who became my unexpected beacon. Brave and resolute, she agreed to testify despite the risks, her voice steady as she recounted the hidden facets of James's double life. Her words painted a portrait of a man tangled in lies and dangerous liaisons, but also of a mother who fought fiercely for her child's future. Meanwhile, my art began to draw attention again, not just as a means of income but as a symbol of my rebirth. I had taken the plunge and opened a small design studio in town, blending my passion for painting with graphic design. The work was challenging but fulfilling, a reminder that I was more than the sum of my past misfortunes. One evening, after a long day at the studio, I found myself wandering along the riverbank where I'd often sketched in better times. The cool breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, and the city lights shimmered like scattered stars on the water's surface. It was there that I realized how much had changed, and how much I still had to fight for it. Alex's accident weighed heavily on my mind. The news had hit me like a thunderclap. The man who had championed my cause was now lying in a hospital bed, his fate uncertain. I spent hours by his side, holding his hand, willing him to wake, to fight. When he finally opened his eyes, the relief was overwhelming. But the road to recovery was long, and I knew our battles were far from over. Then came the discovery that shattered what little peace I'd gathered. Investigators uncovered a hidden compartment in a shipping container connected to Margaret's art dealings. Inside were relics and artifacts, stolen treasures from centuries past, some traced back to international smuggling rings. The implications were staggering. Margaret's influence reached into the darkest corners of the art world, and James was merely a pawn in her game. The web extended beyond anything I'd imagined, threatening not just my family's future, but the safety of countless others. As the pieces fell into place, I found myself at a crossroads. The choice was stark: retreat into the safety of anonymity or step fully into the light, exposing the truth and risking everything. On a rainy evening, as I packed up my studio for the night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a single line: "Beware the shadows you chase. Some secrets refuse to stay buried." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The game had changed. The stakes were higher. And I was no longer just fighting for myself or Charlie. I was part of something far bigger, a puzzle that might consume us all. The night closed in, silent but charged with promise and peril. I knew the next steps would test every ounce of my strength and courage. But one thing was certain. I would face whatever came with my head held high, ready to uncover the mysteries lurking just beyond the horizon. Days bled into nights as the shadows of that cryptic message clung to me like a second skin. The rain kept falling in steady sheets over Canterbury, muffling sounds and washing the streets clean, but inside me a storm raged on. I paced my tiny studio, the scent of turpentine and freshly stretched canvas mingling with the tension that refused to lift. That message wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge. The kind you don't ignore, no matter how much you'd rather curl up with a good book and a cup of tea. Charlie was my light in the darkness. Watching him laugh and chase the sunlight filtering through the kitchen window was the only thing that kept me grounded. His illness, once a looming specter, was now something I fought with everything I had. Just like this battle with James and his family. I was determined to protect him, to build a life free from their poison. Alex was recovering slowly but steadily. His hospital room had become a second home for me, a place where hope flickered amidst the sterile walls and beeping monitors. His dark hair was tousled, and a faint scar traced along his temple, a souvenir from the accident. But the fire in his eyes was intact, burning brighter than ever. He'd promised to stand by me no matter what, and I believed him. More than that, I trusted him. One chilly afternoon. As the wind tugged at the edges of my scarf, Alex and I sat in a quiet corner of a small cafe tucked away near the cathedral. The low hum of conversation and clinking cups offered a fragile comfort. He slid a folder across the table to me. Thick with documents and photographs that we've dug deeper, he said, voice low but steady. Margaret's network is vast. Smuggling, forgery, bribery, you name it. And James? He's deeper in the muck than anyone guessed. But here's the twist. Someone's been feeding us information. Someone on the inside. I leaned over the papers, scanning the names, dates, and coded messages. My pulse quickened. If there was a mole, a whistleblower, maybe we weren't as alone in this as I feared. Who? I asked, barely daring to hope. Alex shook his head. Not yet. But soon. That night sleep was a stranger. Instead, I found myself sketching by the window, the city lights blurring as my hand moved almost unconsciously across the paper. The image that emerged was not a landscape or a portrait but a tangled web, beautiful and dangerous. It seemed to capture the chaos swirling around me, the threads connecting people, secrets and lies. My phone vibrated. A sharp interruption. An unknown number flashed on the screen. My heart skipped out. A voice, distorted but unmistakably female, whispered, "Trust no one but the truth you see yourself. Tomorrow, at the old boathouse by the river." Midnight. That I swallowed hard, torn between fear and fierce resolve. The boathouse was a relic from my childhood, a place where I'd once dreamed of faraway places and endless skies. Now it was the setting for a secret meeting that could change everything. That I dressed carefully for the cold night. My favorite leather jacket, dark jeans that hugged just right, and boots sturdy enough to navigate the uneven riverbank. I tucked my phone and a small flashlight into my bag, heart pounding like a drum. The walk to the boathouse was slow, the mist curling around the lamp posts like ghostly fingers. Every sound was amplified. The crunch of gravel beneath my boots, the distant call of an owl, the gentle lap of water against wood. The boathouse, shadows stretched long and ominous. I hesitated, then stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and forgotten memories. A figure emerged from the darkness. A woman, sharp-eyed and cautious, but with a warmth that softened her edges. "I'm Emily," she said. "I used to work for Margaret. I couldn't stand what she was doing anymore. I've got proof, documents, recordings, even names of those involved. But I need protection. And I need you to know the truth." My breath caught. This was the break we'd been waiting for. Over the next hours, Emily laid bare the extent of the conspiracy, how Margaret's operation stretched internationally, implicating powerful figures in the art world and beyond. She revealed James's role as not just a victim of his mother's schemes but an active participant, driven by greed and desperation. The weight of betrayal settled heavily on me, but so did a fierce determination. This wasn't just about me or Charlie anymore. It was about justice. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. I knew the path ahead would be perilous. But I wasn't alone. With Alex, Emily, and a growing circle of allies, I was ready to face whatever came. Back at my flat, I sat by Charlie's bedside watching him sleep. His small hand curled around mine, fragile yet fierce in its grip. For him, I would fight with every fiber of my being. But as the sun rose, casting light on the city's ancient stones, I couldn't shake the feeling that the deepest shadows were still waiting, and that the next move in this deadly game might come from the most unexpected place. A message blinked on my phone. No words, just a photo. A single chilling image. A painting mine, but with a dark stain spreading across the canvas, as if warning that the past was not done with me yet. The game was far from over. The weight of that image pressed down on me like a physical force. My own painting marred by a spreading dark stain, as if some invisible hand was marking me, warning me that the past was not finished yet. I stared at my phone, heart pounding, mind racing. Who had sent it? What did it mean? And most importantly, what was the next move in this ruthless game? I forced myself to breathe deeply, to steady the trembling in my fingers. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not with Charlie depending on me, not with Alex fighting to regain his strength, and not with Emily's revelation still fresh in my mind. This was a warning, yes, but also a challenge. And I wasn't about to back down. That evening, I found myself once again at the riverbank, the very place where so many of my childhood dreams had taken shape. The boathouse, now bathed in the soft glow of twilight, felt both familiar and foreboding. I thought of Emily's courage, of the secrets she'd shared, and wondered how far I was willing to go to expose the truth. Back in my studio, I lit a single candle, the flickering flame casting long shadows on the walls. I pulled out the painting from the photo. A landscape of the Canterbury countryside, vibrant and alive. I ran my fingers over the canvas, imagining that blotch of darkness spreading slowly, threatening to consume the light. It was a perfect metaphor for my life right now. Alex's voice echoed in my mind, his steady reassurance, his unwavering belief in justice. I knew I couldn't fight alone. I needed allies, strength, and a plan. The next morning I met with Alex and Emily in a quiet cafe, their faces etched with determination. Emily handed over a folder bulging with documents, emails, and recordings, the smoking gun we needed to dismantle Margaret's network. Alex had already contacted a trusted journalist interested in uncovering corruption within the art world. As we strategized, the tension in the room was palpable. Every step forward seemed to draw us deeper into a dangerous maze. But there was no turning back. That night, I returned home to find Charlie asleep, a soft smile on his lips. I kissed his forehead, vowing silently to protect him from the darkness encroaching on our lives. Just as I was about to leave the room, my phone buzzed again. This time a text, "Watch your back. Not everyone is who they seemed." I shivered, realizing the battlefield had expanded beyond the courtroom and the art world. This was personal now, far more than I had ever imagined. Days later, as I walked through the city streets, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure lurking in the shadows, a man whose cold eyes held secrets I wasn't ready to face. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to keep walking, refusing to show fear. The following weeks were a blur of court hearings, meetings, and whispered threats. Margaret's influence reached far and wide, and her allies were not easily shaken. But with Emily's evidence and Alex's relentless drive, cracks began to appear in the facade. One evening, as I prepared to leave the studio, the power flickered and went out. The room plunged into darkness, and for a moment, the silence was deafening. Then a soft tapping at the window made me freeze. Heart racing, I edged closer and peered out. No one was there. Just a single note taped to the glass. The past never forgets. That I folded the note carefully, a cold resolve settling over me. Whatever shadows awaited, I would face them head-on. For Charlie, for Alex, for myself. And deep down I knew this was only the beginning. Because some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some battles are destined to be fought in the dark. The note pressed between my fingers felt heavier than paper ever should. The past never forgets. The words echoed in my mind, a refrain that refused to fade. I folded it again and tucked it into my jacket pocket, the fabric soaking up the cold resolve that surged through me. The studio, once a sanctuary of light and color, now felt like a trap closing in. Shadows gathering in the corners as if waiting to pounce. Charlie's laughter from the next room broke through my spiraling thoughts. That sound, pure, innocent, was my anchor, my reason to keep fighting. I crossed the threshold, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead, feeling the fragile warmth beneath my fingertips. His small chest rose and fell with steady breaths, a silent promise that life, despite everything, could endure. The following days blurred into a relentless tide of court dates, meetings with Alex and Emily, and whispered conversations held in the dim corners of cafes and libraries. Every step forward revealed new layers of the tangled web spun by Margaret and James. The deeper we delved, the more dangerous the path became. One afternoon, as rain hammered against the cafe windows, Alex slid a photograph across the table. The image was grainy but unmistakable. James meeting with a shadowy figure in a poorly lit parking garage. The man's face was obscured, but the posture spoke volumes. A clandestine exchange, a secret deal. Who is he? I asked, tracing the outline with a trembling finger. Alex's jaw tightened. That's what we need to find out. Whoever he is, he's connected to the art smuggling ring, and to Margaret's operations. Emily leaned in, voice low and urgent. I've heard whispers about a fixer, someone who arranges these deals. Nobody knows his real name. They call him the curator. The name sent a chill down my spine. A curator should be a guardian of art, not a shadowy figure orchestrating crime. But in this nightmare, roles were twisted, and trust was a luxury none of us could afford. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat by the window, watching the street lamps cast golden pools of light onto the slick pavement. The city seemed peaceful, but I knew better. Danger lurked beneath the calm surface, a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. A sudden knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. I hesitated, heart pounding, before opening it to reveal a courier holding a small unmarked package. No note, no sender. Inside I found a single canvas wrapped in brown paper. Unfolding it, my breath caught. It was my painting, the same landscape from the photo, but this time defaced with a crimson slash across the sky, like a wound bleeding open. A message scrawled in black ink on the back. Step back, or this is just the beginning. Fear surged, but beneath it, a fierce determination. Whoever was sending these threats wanted to intimidate me, to break me. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. The next morning I met Alex and Emily at the studio, the painting spread out on the table. Their faces mirrored my unease, but also a steely resolve. We need to go public, Alex said. The media, the police, we can't keep this in the shadows any longer. Emily nodded. Exposure is our best weapon. But we have to be careful. The curator and Margaret's network won't go down without a fight. As we planned our next moves, a sudden chill swept through the room. The lights flickered and a low hum filled the air. A warning, or perhaps a promise. Outside, the city carried on unaware, but I knew the game had escalated. The stakes were higher, the enemies closer. That night, as I locked the door behind me, a shadow moved just beyond the streetlight's reach. I caught a glimpse of a figure watching, waiting, and somewhere deep inside I understood. This was no longer just a battle for justice or custody. It was a fight for survival. The past might never forget, but neither would I. And I was ready to face whatever darkness came next, even if it meant walking straight into the heart of the storm.